Welcome to this PowerPoint video presentation on the critical thinking framework. Let's get started. Now, before we get into the framework, let's first ask ourselves, what is critical thinking? Let's start with what we already know. We know that thinking is basically whatever comes into our heads, be it in the form of words or sounds or images, etc. So then, what is critical thinking? How does this word, critical, change what we know thinking to be? Simply put, critical thinking is all about first, noticing our thinking, then examining the quality of our thinking, checking to see if we're being shallow or biased and so on, also that we can then improve how well we really think about things. This is valuable because how well we think about things essentially determines how well we really get what's going on, which then impacts on how well we make decisions about things. As instructors, it's really important that we role model critical thinking, as well as help learners develop their critical thinking. This is because if we don't, then chances are our learners will not necessarily be thinking about things in a deeper and more meaningful way because they don't think it's expected of them, which will significantly impact their level of understanding about what they are learning. So then let's take a look at the critical thinking framework so that we can make better sense of it and apply it during our lessons. To ease us into the framework, let's use an analogy. Picture yourself in a pitch black landscape. You think to yourself, where am I? So you feel around and you find a flashlight. Naturally, you turn on the flashlight. You can then see as much as what the light coming out of the flashlight makes visible for you. If you wanted to discover more about your surroundings for what's useful or what's dangerous, etc., then you would have to keep turning around, shining a light on specific areas you want to look at. For this analogy, you decide to stand on a point and slowly do a 360-degree scan of your surroundings. And you soon realize that you're in the middle of a forest. Thinking about anything is very similar, in the sense that your mind is that pitch black landscape, and then a thought comes up, which can be in the form of a reason, a question, a fact, a conclusion, a concept, an assumption, a consequence, or a point of view on anything. All these different dimensions of thought that go through our minds are what's known in the critical thinking framework as the elements of thought, which is the first part of the framework. What the elements of thought is essentially about is that often when a thought or idea pops into our heads, such as a forest, we tend to have a narrow appreciation of it. And so when we talk about quality of thinking, we are really talking about how little or how much we really appreciate things and base our decisions on that. The question then becomes, how do we improve the quality of our thinking? The elements of thought as a framework can help us with this. For any given thought or idea, there are 8 dimensions we can explore. To open up any dimension of the thought, we simply have to ask specific questions around it. For example, asking the question, what is my goal or objective relative to this thought or idea, opens up the dimension of purpose. From here, we simply keep asking ourselves questions in order to explore all the other dimensions to our thought or idea, and eventually we get a more well-rounded view of that thought or idea in question. The second part of the critical thinking framework is known as the Universal Intellectual Standards. What this is essentially about is that we may have an idea in our heads, for example, a forest. We may even have a very well-rounded view of that idea, but then it could be a very hazy one, which means that the quality of our thinking is still not quite the best it could be. Why? Because it may lack any one of these standards. So then, to further improve the quality of our thinking, we must ask ourselves or each other questions around the standards of our thought or idea, which should then help us focus and sharpen the quality of our thinking. In summary, the critical thinking framework is all about improving the quality of our thinking by applying the elements of thought to get a well-rounded quality to our thinking, and applying the universal intellectual standards to focus and sharpen the quality of our thinking. As instructors, you can essentially help your learners think more critically about anything by simply asking them questions around the elements of thought or asking them questions from the universal intellectual standards. Thanks for watching. Scan the QR code on the right to view a video on what critical thinking questions look like in practice.